He was homeless, sleeping in a rusted car with his 8-year-old son when he broke into an abandoned cruise ship looking for scrap metal to sell for food. What he found in the engine room vault was $260 million in cash, bonds, and gold, and a secret so dangerous it would either save his life or end it. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The sodium lights of the Port of Oakland cast long, sickly shadows across the cracked pavement where Marcus Reed sat in the driver's seat of a 1998 Honda Accord that had given up running 6 months ago. The engine was dead, seized up from a blown head gasket he couldn't afford to fix. The inspection sticker had expired. The registration had lapsed back in March. The passenger side mirror hung by a single bolt, and the back window was held together with duct tape and prayers. But the doors still locked, the seats still reclined, and for Marcus and his 8-year-old son Tyler, that made it home. Tyler was curled up in the back seat, wrapped in 2 sleeping bags Marcus had found behind a church donation bin 3 weeks ago. The boy's small chest rose and fell in the steady rhythm of exhausted sleep, his face peaceful in a way that made Marcus's heart ache. Tyler's brown hair stuck up at odd angles, and his cheeks were thinner than they should be for a kid his age. He'd gone to bed hungry again tonight. Marcus had split a gas station sandwich between them hours earlier, carefully dividing it so Tyler got the bigger half while pretending he wasn't starving himself. Marcus was 34 years old, but the cracked side mirror showed him someone at least a decade older. His face was gaunt, cheekbones too sharp, eyes sunken into dark hollows. His hands, once steady and skilled enough to dismantle and rebuild a marine diesel engine blindfolded, now trembled slightly from malnutrition and constant stress. His beard had grown wild and uneven because razors cost money, and money went to Tyler first, always. His eyes, once bright with ambition and dreams, had dulled to the color of ash, the color of giving up. He'd been a marine engineer once, a good one. Certified, trained, skilled. He'd worked on luxury cruise ships that sailed to places most people only saw in travel magazines: the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, Alaska's Inside Passage. He'd been responsible for engines worth millions of dollars, for keeping massive vessels running smooth in the middle of the ocean. He'd made good money, $58,000 a year plus overtime and bonuses. He'd had an apartment with Tyler's mother, Elena. A 2-bedroom place in Oakland with a view of the bay. He'd had furniture, a savings account, a truck that ran. He'd had plans: put Tyler through college, maybe buy a house someday, take Elena to see her family in Mexico. Then Elena got sick. It started with fatigue she couldn't shake, then the weight loss, then the pain. By the time the doctors figured out it was pancreatic cancer, it had already spread. She was gone in 4 months. 4 months of hospital stays, specialist appointments, experimental treatments their insurance didn't cover, medications that cost more per week than Marcus made in a month. He'd watched the woman he loved waste away in a hospital bed while the bills piled up like snow in a blizzard. He'd used their savings first, then he'd taken out loans, then he'd maxed out credit cards. He'd sold everything they owned that wasn't nailed down: the furniture, his tools, Elena's jewelry, the truck. He'd worked double shifts when he could, slept in the hospital waiting room when he couldn't go home. And when Elena died on a Tuesday morning in November, holding his hand and whispering Tyler's name, Marcus had been left with exactly 3 things: a grief so heavy it crushed the air from his lungs, a 6-year-old son who didn't understand why mommy wasn't coming home, and $137,000 in medical debt. The collection calls started within a week. The eviction notice came 2 months later. Marcus had tried to hold on, tried to work, tried to function, but the grief was like walking through concrete. He'd show up to work late, make mistakes he'd never made before, snap at supervisors who asked if he was okay. He'd lost his temper one day when a foreman questioned a repair he'd done, and that was it. Fired. Certifications didn't matter when you couldn't keep yourself together. He'd tried to find other work, but marine engineering wasn't something you could do without references, without certifications that were current, without a stable address. He'd applied to mechanic shops, warehouses, construction sites. Some didn't call back. Others took one look at him, hollow-eyed and desperate, and made excuses. He'd burned through what little money he had left on a cheap motel for him and Tyler, trying to keep the boy in school, trying to maintain some sense of normal. But normal costs money, and Marcus didn't have any. The eviction from the motel came on a Friday. They'd packed what fit in the Accord: clothes, Tyler's stuffed bear, a photo album, a few books. Marcus had promised his son it was temporary, that Daddy would find work, that they'd have a real home again soon. That was 11 months ago. Now they lived in a car that didn't run, parked in the shadows of the Port of Oakland, invisible to everyone who mattered. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter against the cold October air seeping through the cracked weather stripping. His breath fogged in front of him. He stared through the dirty windshield at the decommission yard across the chain-link fence, the place where old ships went to die. He'd been watching that yard for 3 weeks now, ever since they'd moved to this particular spot. He'd studied the patterns like he used to study engine schematics. Security made rounds every 2 hours, driving a white pickup truck with a yellow light on top. The guard was older, moved slowly, mostly stayed in his truck. The fence had a section near the southeast corner where the metal had rusted through, leaving a gap just wide enough for a man to squeeze through if he didn't mind scraping his back. And inside that fence were ships, massive cargo vessels, old fishing trawlers, decommissioned military boats, ships filled with copper wiring, brass fixtures, aluminum paneling, stainless steel fittings, things Marcus could recognize, remove, and sell to the scrapyards on 7th Street. It wasn't legal. Marcus knew that. Breaking into a secured facility, stripping parts from ships that didn't belong to him, selling stolen materials. It was theft. But desperation had a way of rewriting the rules you thought you'd never break. Tyler needed to eat. Tyler needed clean clothes. Tyler needed to believe his father could still take care of him. And Marcus would do anything, legal or not, to make that happen. He glanced back at his son, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the war his father fought every single day just to keep them alive. Tyler deserved better than this, better than sleeping in a car, better than wondering where his next meal would come from, better than watching his father slowly disappear into the kind of desperation that changed a man. Marcus made a decision. Tomorrow night he'd cross that fence. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Marcus and Tyler went through their routine, the one they'd developed over months of living on the streets. They woke up early, before the sun, while the port workers were just arriving for shift change. That's when they could blend in, look like they belonged somewhere. They walked to the gas station on 5th Street where the bathroom was usually clean, and Marcus helped Tyler wash his face and brush his teeth with the supplies they kept in a backpack. Tyler was good about it now, didn't complain anymore about not having a real bathroom, about having to use the sink to wash up. They went to the soup kitchen on Alameda for breakfast: oatmeal, toast, orange juice. Tyler ate everything on his plate while Marcus pushed his food around, his stomach too tight with anxiety to handle much. After breakfast, they walked to the public library when it opened at 10. The library was warm, safe, and free. Tyler could read books, do the homework from the packet the nice volunteer teacher at the shelter had given him. Marcus sat nearby, sometimes reading the newspaper someone left behind, sometimes just staring at nothing, his mind elsewhere. Around noon, they left the library and walked to the park. Tyler played on the swings, his laughter cutting through the fog of Marcus's thoughts like sunlight. For those few minutes, watching his son pump his legs and soar higher, Marcus could almost pretend things were normal. That they were just a dad and his kid spending a Saturday at the park, that they had a home to go back to. But the pretending never lasted long. They ate lunch at a different soup kitchen, this one run by a church on Broadway. Ham sandwiches and apple slices. Tyler told Marcus about a book he was reading, something about dragons and a boy who could talk to them. Marcus listened, nodded, asked questions, trying to be present even though his mind kept drifting to tonight, to the fence, to the ships. By evening, they were back at the car. Tyler did more homework while Marcus sat in the driver's seat watching the light fade from the sky. The port came alive at night in a different way. Floodlights clicking on, forklifts moving shipping containers, the distant sound of welding torches and hydraulic lifts. But the decommission yard stayed dark and quiet, forgotten. Marcus waited until Tyler fell asleep around 8:30, curled up in his sleeping bags with his stuffed bear tucked under his chin. Then Marcus waited longer, watching the security truck make its rounds. 9 p.m., 11 p.m., 1 a.m. At 1:15, the white pickup passed by the southeast corner and disappeared around the north side of the yard. Marcus took a deep breath. He leaned over the seat and looked at Tyler one more time, his son's face peaceful in sleep. "I'll be back in an hour," Marcus whispered, even though Tyler couldn't hear him. "I promise, buddy. I promise." He slipped out of the car, locked the doors, and tucked the keys above the back tire. He wore dark jeans, a black hoodie with the hood pulled up, and work gloves he'd stolen from a hardware store 2 months ago when he'd still thought he might find legitimate work. Slung over his shoulder was an old duffel bag, empty and waiting to be filled with whatever he could carry. The walk to the gap in the fence took less than 2 minutes. Marcus glanced around, making sure no one was watching, then squeezed through. The metal scraped against his back, and he felt something tear. His hoodie or his skin, he wasn't sure. Didn't matter. He was inside. The decommission yard opened up before him like a graveyard for giants. Massive ships loomed in the darkness, their hulls streaked with rust and peeling paint, their windows dark and hollow like empty eye sockets. Some of the vessels were tilted at unnatural angles, partially dismantled, their guts exposed, pipes hanging loose, deck plates removed, engines half torn apart. Others sat upright and eerily intact, as if they might set sail at any moment if only someone would turn the key. Marcus moved quickly but carefully, staying in the shadows, avoiding the pools of weak light cast by scattered floodlights. He'd done his research during his library sessions, looking up scrap metal prices, figuring out what was worth taking. Copper was the best, $7 a pound. Brass was good too. Aluminum was lighter, easier to carry, but paid less. Stainless steel if he could find fixtures that weren't bolted down too tight. He passed a decommissioned naval frigate, its deck stripped bare, already picked clean by the official scrap crews. Then a cargo ship listing heavily to port, a gaping hole in its starboard side like a wound that never healed. Then a fishing trawler covered in rust so thick it looked like orange fur. And then he saw it. A cruise ship. Marcus stopped in his tracks, breath catching in his throat. The vessel was massive, easily 800 feet long, maybe longer. It towered above him like a sleeping beast, 10 or 11 stories of white-painted steel gone gray with age and neglect. Even in the darkness he could make out the distinctive lines, the sweeping decks, the rows of balconies, the massive smokestack marked with faded paint. He moved closer, his heart pounding harder now. As he approached, he could see the name on the hull. Most of it had been scraped away, probably deliberately, but enough remained for Marcus to make out the letters. Ocean Empress. Marcus's mind reeled. He knew this ship. Not personally, but by reputation. Every marine engineer knew the story of the Ocean Empress. She'd been one of the premier luxury liners in the early 2000s, built by an Italian shipyard, operated by Meridian Luxury Lines, private suites with marble bathrooms, restaurants run by Michelin star chefs, helicopter landing pads, casinos, the works. She'd catered to the ultra-wealthy, people who thought regular cruises were too common. But the ship had vanished from service about 15 years ago. Marcus remembered reading about it in the industry publications he used to subscribe to, back when he had an address where mail could be delivered. There had been rumors, strange ones, whispers of financial irregularities, of the ship being sold to a shell company, of it being repurposed for something other than tourism, and then nothing. The Ocean Empress had simply disappeared from maritime records. And now here it was, rotting in an Oakland decommission yard. Marcus approached the gangway, a rusted metal ramp leading up to the main deck. He tested it with one foot, applying pressure slowly. The metal groaned but held. He climbed, each step echoing too loud in the silence, his gloved hands gripping the railing. At the top, he paused. The deck stretched out before him, vast and empty. Rows of deck chairs sat in perfect formation, their fabric rotted away to expose rusted frames beneath. A swimming pool gaped empty in the center of the deck, its tiles cracked and stained. The windows of the cabin stared back at him, dark and lifeless. But what struck Marcus most was how intact everything looked. Ships that came to decommission yards were supposed to be stripped first, furniture removed, fixtures salvaged, anything of value taken before the hull was sold for scrap. But this ship looked like everyone had simply walked away mid-voyage. There were still glasses on some of the outdoor bar tables, still life preservers hanging in their designated alcoves, still towels stacked in a storage bin near the pool, though they'd rotted to gray rags. It felt wrong, not just abandoned, frozen, like someone had pressed pause on the entire vessel and never pressed play again. Marcus moved toward the main entrance, a pair of heavy glass doors that should have been locked but weren't. They swung open with a long, loud creak that made him wince. He stepped inside. The air hit him first, stale and metallic, thick with the smell of mildew and something else he couldn't quite identify. Decay, maybe. Or just the smell of time eating away at things that used to be beautiful. The lobby was grand even in its deterioration. A massive chandelier hung from the ceiling, at least half its crystals missing. The remaining ones coated in dust so thick they looked gray instead of clear. The floor was marble, cracked in places but still polished in others, creating a strange patchwork of past elegance and present ruin. A grand staircase swept upward, its railings tarnished but still intact. Marcus's footsteps echoed as he walked slowly through the space, his flashlight, a small LED one he'd bought at a dollar store, cutting a narrow beam through the darkness. He passed the reception desk where passengers would have checked in. A computer monitor sat on the counter, its screen dark and dead, a thin layer of dust coating the keyboard. Behind the desk, mailbox-style slots lined the wall, each one labeled with a cabin number. Some still had key cards inside. He moved deeper into the ship. A grand piano sat in the corner of what must have been a lounge, its keys yellowed and several missing. The lid was open, and when Marcus shined his light inside, he saw that some of the strings had snapped, curling away from the frame like broken guitar strings. To his left, the entrance to a dining hall. Marcus stepped inside and froze. The tables were still set. Plates, silverware, cloth napkins folded into decorative shapes, wine glasses at each setting. It was like everyone had been about to sit down for dinner and then vanished into thin air. Dust covered everything, and some of the plates had cracked from temperature changes over the years, but the scene was unmistakably eerie. This wasn't right. This wasn't how decommissioning worked. Ships got cleared out, stripped, cleaned. They didn't get abandoned with place settings still on the tables. Marcus backed out of the dining hall, his unease growing. He moved through corridors lined with cabin doors, most of them standing open. He shined his light into a few. Most were empty, beds stripped down to stained mattresses. But some still had personal belongings. A suitcase open on a chair, clothes spilling out. A book on a nightstand, pages yellowed and warped. A pair of shoes by the door, leather cracked and moldy. It was like a ghost ship. Like the Mary Celeste, that famous vessel found adrift with no crew, meals half-eaten on the tables, but no one aboard. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold air. He thought about turning back. about leaving this place and never coming back. Whatever had happened here, whatever story this ship held, it felt like something he shouldn't disturb. But then he thought about Tyler, asleep in the car, hungry, cold, depending on his father to provide. And Marcus needed copper, brass, anything he could sell. His discomfort didn't pay for food. He kept moving, descending a stairwell, going deeper into the vessel. He passed crew quarters, small rooms with bunk beds, lockers standing open. He passed industrial kitchens with stainless steel counters and massive ovens that would be worth a fortune if he could figure out how to remove them. He passed laundry rooms with commercial washers and dryers, their doors hanging open like mouths frozen mid-scream. And then he found what he was looking for, the engine room. The door was heavy, industrial, painted a faded yellow with a warning sign. Authorized personnel only, danger, high voltage, no admittance. Marcus smiled faintly despite his nerves. He was authorized. Or at least he used to be. This was his world. Engine rooms, mechanical systems, the heart of the ship where everything that mattered happened. He pushed the door open. It swung inward with a metallic groan that echoed through the space. The engine room was exactly as he remembered from his years at sea. Massive diesel turbines lined the walls, their metal surfaces dulled with age and a fine coating of dust. Control panels blinked with dead lights, their screens dark. Pipes crisscrossed the ceiling like a mechanical circulatory system. Catwalks provided access to upper levels. And in the center, dominating the space, was the main engine, a beast of steel and precision engineering, silent and still after years of disuse. Marcus stepped inside, breathing in the familiar smell of old engine oil and metal. This was where he belonged. This was what he understood. Not the strange frozen passenger areas above, not the eerie dining halls or the abandoned cabins. This was real. This was mechanical. This made sense. He set his duffel bag down and approached the main engine, running his gloved hand along its surface. Cold. Dead. But salvageable. There was copper here. Lots of it. Wiring, coils, heat exchangers, brass fittings throughout the fuel system, aluminum housings on the generators, stainless steel panels he could pry loose if he had the right tools. Enough to fill his bag 10 times over, enough to feed Tyler for weeks. Marcus pulled out a screwdriver and got to work on the first panel, looking for easy access to the wiring beneath. But as he worked, something caught his eye. A seam in the wall behind one of the secondary turbines. He stopped, squinting in the dim light of his flashlight. It wasn't a normal seam. Walls in engine rooms were solid, welded steel or riveted plates. But this looked like a vertical line, too straight, too deliberate. Marcus stood and moved closer, shining his light along the edge. It ran from floor to ceiling, perfectly straight, and on the other side, a matching line, like a door. His pulse quickened. He moved around the secondary turbine, noticing for the first time that it was lighter than it should be, that the bolts holding it in place were loose, like it had been moved before. Behind it, the seam became unmistakable. It was a door. Solid steel, seamless with the wall, but definitely a door. And beside it, embedded in the metal, was something that made Marcus's heart race. A keypad, 8 buttons worn smooth from use. Engine rooms didn't have keypads. They didn't have hidden doors. They were functional spaces, designed for access and maintenance, not secrecy. Marcus stared at the keypad, his mind spinning. What the hell was this? Some kind of safe room, emergency shelter, or something else entirely? He reached out and touched the buttons. 4 of them were more worn than the others, the numbers nearly rubbed away. 1, 4, 7, 9. Someone had used this keypad frequently. Someone had entered this code over and over until the numbers wore smooth. Marcus tried a combination, 1479. Nothing. He tried another, 9741. Still nothing. He stepped back, frustration mounting. He didn't have time for this. He needed to grab what he came for and get back to Tyler. But the door nagged at him, a mystery he couldn't quite walk away from. Then his flashlight beam caught something he'd missed. Scratched into the metal beside the keypad, almost invisible unless you were looking directly at it, were numbers. Carved roughly, deliberately. 7/14/99. A date, maybe? July 14th, 1999? Marcus's hands trembled as he entered the code. 71499. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a soft click echoed through the engine room, mechanical and final. The door slid open 6 inches, then stopped, waiting. Cool air escaped from whatever lay beyond, air that felt different from the stale atmosphere of the rest of the ship. Controlled, preserved. Marcus stood frozen, staring into the darkness beyond the door. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away, to grab some copper and get out, to forget he'd ever seen this. But he'd come this far, and something in that darkness called to him, promising answers to questions he hadn't even known to ask. Marcus gripped his flashlight tighter, took a deep breath, and pulled the door open wider. What he saw in the beam of his light made his knees buckle and his breath catch in his throat. It was a vault, and it was filled with more money than Marcus had ever imagined existed in one place. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He'd closed the vault door immediately after seeing what was inside, his hands shaking so badly he could barely enter the code to lock it again. He'd stumbled out of the engine room, through the corridors, across the deck, down the gangway. He'd squeezed back through the fence gap and returned to the Accord where Tyler still slept peacefully, unaware that his father had just discovered something that could change their lives forever or end them both. Marcus sat in the driver's seat until dawn, staring at nothing, his mind racing in circles. The vault, the money, stacks and stacks of cash, hundreds, 50s, even some bundles of foreign currency he couldn't identify in the brief moment before panic had taken over. Gold bars lined up like books on a shelf, documents in sealed plastic cases. This wasn't lost cargo. This wasn't forgotten assets. This was hidden, deliberately, by people who didn't want it found. When Tyler woke up around 7, yawning and rubbing his eyes, Marcus forced himself to act normal. "Morning, buddy," he said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "Morning, Dad." Tyler stretched in the back seat. "Can we get pancakes today?" Marcus's chest tightened. Pancakes cost money they didn't have. "How about we go to the church breakfast? I heard they're doing French toast." Tyler's face lit up. "Really? With syrup?" "With syrup." They went through their morning routine, the gas station bathroom, the church breakfast where Tyler ate 3 pieces of French toast and Marcus pushed scrambled eggs around his plate. But Marcus's mind was elsewhere, turning over the problem of the vault like a Rubik's Cube he couldn't solve. He should walk away, forget he ever saw it. That money belonged to someone, and whoever hid $200 million on an abandoned cruise ship wasn't someone you wanted to cross. But then he looked at Tyler, syrup on his chin, smiling for the first time in days, and Marcus thought about what that money could do. A home, food, school, medical care, everything Tyler deserved and Marcus couldn't provide. 3 days passed. Marcus didn't go back to the ship. He tried to focus on other things, looking for day labor work, checking the classifieds, visiting the library with Tyler. But every night, lying in the car while his son slept, Marcus thought about the vault, about the code scratched into the metal, about the door sliding open, about what might be waiting inside if he was brave enough or desperate enough to look. On the 4th day, Tyler asked a question that changed everything. "Dad, what's that big white boat in the yard?" They were walking past the fence line, taking a different route to the library. Marcus froze. "What boat?" Tyler pointed through the chain link. "That one. The really big one. It looks like the cruise ships in my book." Marcus followed his son's gaze. From this angle, with morning light hitting it just right, the Ocean Empress was visible over the smaller vessels. Massive, imposing, waiting. That's an old cruise ship, Marcus said carefully. It's being torn apart for scrap. Have you ever been on a cruise ship? Marcus's throat tightened. Yeah, I used to work on them, before. He stopped. Before your mom got sick. Before everything fell apart. A long time ago. Tyler looked up at him with those wide brown eyes, so much like Elena's. What was it like? Marcus knelt down to Tyler's level, there on the cracked sidewalk beside the fence. For the first time in months, he let himself remember not the pain of losing his job, but the pride he'd felt doing it. It was incredible, buddy. These huge engines, bigger than our car, bigger than a house, and I got to make sure they ran perfectly. I got to know every pipe, every valve, every system. When we were in the middle of the ocean, hundreds of miles from land, those engines were what kept everyone safe. That was my job. Were you good at it? Marcus smiled sadly. Yeah, I was really good at it. I bet you were the best, Tyler said with absolute certainty, the kind only a child has about their father. Marcus pulled Tyler into a hug, holding him maybe a little too tight, and in that moment he made a decision. Not about the money, not yet, but about something almost as important. Hey, buddy, you want to see what a real cruise ship looks like? Up close? Tyler's eyes went wide. Really? Can we? The yard's closed, but I know a way in. We'd have to be really quiet and really careful. It would be our secret adventure. Tyler nodded so enthusiastically his whole body moved. Yes, yes, can we go now? Marcus glanced at his watch, 2 in the afternoon. Security would be making rounds, but there were gaps, long ones. And suddenly, Marcus wanted his son to see something beautiful, something from the world his father used to inhabit. A world where Marcus had been skilled and valued and whole. Okay, Marcus said. But you have to promise me. You stay close, you do exactly what I say, and you don't touch anything. Deal? Deal! They waited until 3:30, when Marcus knew from his observations that security would be on the far north side of the yard. They slipped through the fence gap together, Tyler small enough to slide through easily. Marcus took his son's hand and led him through the maze of dead ships, moving quickly but quietly. When they rounded the corner and the Ocean Empress came into full view, Tyler gasped. Whoa! Yeah, Marcus said softly. Whoa! Up close, even in decay, the ship was magnificent. Tyler stood at the bottom of the gangway, head tilted back, trying to see the top decks. It's so big. She's about 800 feet long, that's almost 3 football fields. Did you work on ships this big? Couple of times. Mostly I worked on smaller ones, but the engines, those were all the same to me. Diesel turbines, reduction gears, prop shafts. I knew them inside and out. Marcus led Tyler up the gangway, holding his hand tight. At the top, Tyler spun in a slow circle, taking in the pool, the deck chairs, the vast expanse of outdoor space. This is where people would swim? Yep, and lie in the sun, have drinks brought to them. Up there, Marcus pointed to a higher deck, there would be a buffet. All you can eat 24 hours a day. Tyler's stomach growled audibly, and Marcus felt a knife twist in his gut. His son was 8 years old, and his body had learned to be hungry. Come on, Marcus said. Let me show you the inside. They entered through the main doors. Tyler's sneakers squeaked on the marble floor as he walked, mouth hanging open. The chandelier caught his attention immediately. Is that real crystal? It was, probably worth more than a car. They moved through the lobby slowly, Tyler asking a million questions. What's this? Who stayed here? Where did they eat? Did people really pay money to ride on boats? Marcus answered each one, and with every answer he felt himself coming back to life a little. This was his world. This was what he knew. They climbed the grand staircase to the second level. Marcus showed Tyler the shops where passengers would buy jewelry and perfume. The casino with its gaming tables still in place, Cards scattered across the felt like someone had abandoned a game mid-hand. The theater with rows and rows of velvet seats facing a dark stage. People watched shows here? Tyler asked. Every night, Broadway-style productions, magic shows, comedians. Did you watch them? Marcus smiled. Sometimes, when I wasn't working. The crew could see shows for free if there were empty seats. They explored deck after deck, a library with books still on the shelves, their pages swollen with moisture. A children's play area with a slide and tunnels, everything coated in dust but still recognizable. A gym with exercise equipment frozen in place. Tyler ran ahead sometimes, laughing, exploring, being a kid in a way Marcus hadn't seen in months. In one of the passenger corridors, they found a cabin with the door open. Inside, a suitcase sat on the luggage rack still packed with clothes. Tyler reached for it, but Marcus caught his hand. Remember, buddy, look but don't touch. Why is all their stuff still here? That was the question, wasn't it? Marcus had been wondering the same thing since the first night. I don't know, but ships don't usually get decommissioned like this. Something happened here. Something that made everyone leave in a hurry. Like what? I don't know, Marcus said honestly. But he was starting to form theories. None of them good. They descended to Deck 3, where the crew quarters were located. Marcus's memories came flooding back. The tiny bunks, the shared bathrooms, the mess hall where off-duty crew would gather to eat and swap stories. He'd been young when he first started working cruise ships, 22 and fresh out of maritime engineering school. He'd shared a cabin with a guy from the Philippines who snored like a chainsaw and a cook from Jamaica who made the best jerk chicken Marcus had ever tasted. This is where the people who worked on the ship lived? Tyler asked, peering into a crew cabin. Yeah, it wasn't fancy like the passenger areas, but it was home. You made friends, became like a family. Did you have friends? Marcus thought about his old crewmates. Carlos, who could diagnose engine problems by sound alone. Dimitri, who taught Marcus how to rebuild a fuel injection pump while drunk on vodka. Sarah, the chief engineer who'd mentored him and written him recommendation letters. He wondered where they all were now, if any of them knew what had become of him. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. I had good friends. They kept moving deeper into the ship, past laundry facilities with industrial washers still loaded with sheets, past storage rooms filled with supplies, past crew lounges with pool tables and old TVs. And with each level they descended, Marcus felt himself being pulled toward the inevitable. The engine room. He'd avoided bringing Tyler there initially, but now he couldn't resist. This was his domain. This was where he'd spent 10 years of his life becoming an expert. And he wanted his son to see it, to understand what his father had been before grief and debt had torn it all away. Okay, Marcus said as they reached the heavy yellow door. Behind this door is the engine room. It's going to be dark and it might feel a little scary, but I promise it's safe. This is where I worked. This is what I did. Tyler nodded, eyes wide with anticipation. Marcus pushed the door open. The engine room spread out before them, vast and silent. Tyler's mouth fell open. Dad, this is huge! 3 diesel turbines, Marcus said, his voice taking on a different quality. Confident, knowledgeable, the voice of the man he used to be. Each one capable of generating enough power to light up a small town. Over here. He led Tyler to the main engine. This is the heart of the ship. Everything else is just support systems. He walked Tyler through it all, pointing out components, explaining how fuel became motion, how the ship's massive propellers were turned by reduction gears, how the whole system had to work in perfect harmony. Tyler listened with rapt attention, asking questions that showed he was actually understanding, not just being polite. Could you fix it? Tyler asked. If it was broken? Marcus ran his hand along the cold metal surface of the main turbine. Yeah, buddy. I could fix anything in here. Every system, every part. I knew these engines better than I knew... He stopped. Better than I knew how to take care of myself. Better than I knew how to ask for help. Better than I knew how to keep our family together when it mattered most. You're really smart, Dad, Tyler said simply. Marcus's eyes burned. He knelt down and pulled Tyler into a hug. I'm trying to be, he whispered. I'm trying so hard to be smart enough to fix things. They sat together on the metal grating of the catwalk for a while, not talking, just being. And then Tyler said, Dad, can we come back here? I like it. It feels like you belong here. Marcus looked at his son, this beautiful, resilient kid who'd never once complained about living in a car or going to bed hungry, who still believed his father could fix anything. Yeah, Marcus said, we can come back. But even as he said it, his eyes drifted to the wall behind the secondary turbine, to where he knew the hidden door was, to where the vault waited. Tyler yawned, the long day of walking and exploring catching up with him. I'm tired, Dad. Okay, let's head back. But as they stood to leave, Tyler paused. Hey, what's that? Marcus turned. Tyler was pointing at the wall, at the seam Marcus had discovered. In the afternoon light filtering through a high porthole, it was more visible than it had been at night. What's what? Marcus asked, his heart starting to pound. That line, in the wall. It looks weird. Marcus tried to keep his voice casual. Probably just where two panels join together. Ships are made of lots of pieces welded together. But Tyler moved closer, curious now. No, look, it goes all the way up, like a door. Marcus's mind raced. He could steer Tyler away, distract him, leave now. But part of him, the desperate drowning part, wanted Tyler to see, wanted a witness, wanted to share the weight of this impossible discovery. You're right, Marcus said slowly. It does look like a door. He moved the secondary turbine aside, easier now that he knew it was meant to move. Behind it, the keypad was visible. Tyler's eyes went huge. There's a secret door, with a code. Looks like it. Can you open it? Marcus stared at the keypad. This was it, the moment of decision. He could tell Tyler they needed to leave, that it wasn't their business that they should go. Or he could show his son that sometimes, when you've got nothing left to lose, you take the leap. Maybe, Marcus said, if I can figure out the code. Try something. Tyler was excited now, all tiredness forgotten. This was an adventure, a mystery. He didn't understand the danger, and Marcus, God help him, didn't want to explain it yet. Marcus examined the keypad like he was seeing it for the first time. 4 of these numbers are more worn than the others. 1, 4, 7, 9. That means those are the numbers in the code. Like a puzzle. Exactly like a puzzle. Marcus pretended to study the area around the keypad, then pointed to the scratched numbers beside it. Wait. Look. Someone wrote something here. 71499. That could be it. Marcus's finger hovered over the keypad. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that he was involving Tyler in something dangerous, that a good father would walk away. But desperation and hope made terrible partners in decision-making. Okay, Marcus said, let's try it. He entered the code. 71499. The click echoed through the engine room. The door slid open 6 inches. Tyler grabbed Marcus's arm. You did it! You actually did it! Cool air escaped from the gap, and with it, the faint smell of something Marcus couldn't identify. Not decay, not mildew. Something else. Something preserved. Stay behind me, Marcus said, his voice suddenly serious. He positioned himself between Tyler and the door. I don't know what's in there. Maybe it's treasure, Tyler whispered, eyes shining with excitement. Marcus pulled the door open wider and shined his flashlight inside. The vault revealed itself in sections as the beam of light swept across it. First, the metal cases along the left wall, stamped with numbers and symbols. then the wooden crates stacked neatly near the back. Then Marcus's breath stopped. Money. Stacks upon stacks of banded cash, arranged in precise rows on industrial shelving. $100 bills, €50 notes, British pounds, Japanese yen. More currency than Marcus had ever seen in his entire life, more than he'd known existed outside of bank vaults and treasury buildings. But that wasn't all. Gold bars sat in neat rows along one wall, each one stamped with serial numbers and purity marks. 20, 30, maybe 40 bars. Each one had to weigh at least 25 pounds. Marcus's engineer brain did the calculation automatically. Gold was trading around $1,900 per ounce. 25 pounds was 400 ounces. Times 1,900, each bar was worth over $700,000. Bearer bonds filled an entire crate, each document potentially worth millions. Jewelry, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, pearls, spilled from velvet cases that had been left open as if someone had been taking inventory. And in the back, secured in locked cabinets with transparent doors, were hard drives, passports, and documents marked with official-looking stamps in languages Marcus didn't recognize. "Dad?" Tyler's voice was small, uncertain. "Why is there so much money?" Marcus couldn't answer. His legs felt weak. His vision swam. This wasn't thousands. This wasn't even hundreds of thousands. This was millions. Tens of millions. Maybe. He thought about the size of those stacks, the number of gold bars, the bonds. He thought about his training, his engineering precision, his ability to estimate and calculate. $200 million, possibly more. $200 million, just sitting in a vault hidden in the engine room of an abandoned cruise ship in an Oakland decommission yard. "Dad, whose money is this?" Tyler asked. Marcus's mouth was too dry to speak. He backed out of the vault slowly, pulling Tyler with him. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold the flashlight. "I don't." His voice cracked. "Tyler, we need to leave. Right now." "But the money. We need to leave." Marcus's voice came out harder than he intended, and Tyler flinched. Marcus immediately regretted his tone, but fear had taken over. This money wasn't lost. It wasn't forgotten. It was hidden. By people with resources, by people with power, by people who would kill to protect it. He closed the vault door, heard the lock engage with that same mechanical click. He moved the turbine back into place. He grabbed Tyler's hand and pulled him toward the engine room exit. "Dad, you're hurting me," Tyler said. Marcus loosened his grip but didn't let go. "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. We need to go. Now." They moved through the ship faster than before, no more leisurely exploration. Marcus kept looking over his shoulder, irrational terror building that someone had seen them, that someone knew what they'd found, that men in dark suits were already moving through the corridors. What happens next will turn this night upside down, reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. They climbed the stairs, crossed the deck, descended the gangway. Marcus scanned the decommission yard constantly, looking for security, for cameras, for any sign they'd been spotted. But the yard was quiet, afternoon sun casting long shadows between the dead ships. They squeezed through the fence gap, and Marcus didn't breathe properly until they were 3 blocks away, Tyler's hand still tight in his own. Back at the Accord, Marcus helped Tyler into the back seat. The boy was quiet now, picking up on his father's fear even if he didn't understand it. "Dad," Tyler said as Marcus climbed into the driver's seat, "are we in trouble?" Marcus turned to look at his son. Those wide brown eyes, that innocent face, that absolute trust that Dad would make everything okay. "No," Marcus lied. "No, buddy, we're not in trouble. I got spooked. That's all. That money, it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to someone. And I need to figure out what to do about it. We could tell the police, Tyler suggested, like when you find someone's wallet and turn it in. If only it were that simple. Marcus thought about what $200 million represented. That kind of money didn't get lost by accident. It got hidden from governments, from law enforcement, from people asking questions. That money was connected to something criminal. Had to be. Drug trafficking, money laundering, arms dealing, something that left bodies in its wake. But Tyler's suggestion hung in the air like a lifeline. Tell someone, report it, do the right thing. Marcus thought about Alan Cho, the maritime investigator whose forum post he'd seen years ago. Someone who might have answers, someone who might know how to handle this without getting Marcus and Tyler killed. Maybe you're right, Marcus said quietly. Maybe we should tell someone. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Again. He sat in the driver's seat staring at the fence line, at the dark shape of the Ocean Empress visible beyond it. His mind replayed the moment of opening the vault over and over. The stacks of cash, the gold bars, the bearer bonds. $260 million. He'd done the math more carefully, estimating conservatively. That's what it was. Give or take a few million. An amount of money so large it didn't feel real. An amount that could solve every problem Marcus had ever had and every problem he'd ever have. Or get him killed. Tyler stirred in the back seat, talking in his sleep. Dad, the secret door. So much treasure. Marcus closed his eyes. Tyler thought it was an adventure, a game. He didn't understand that they'd stumbled into something deadly, that people who hid this kind of money didn't just let it go when someone found it. But Marcus also thought about the code scratched beside the keypad. Someone had wanted that door to be opened eventually. Someone had left a map for whoever came looking. Why? Was it insurance? A backup plan? Evidence hidden for some future reckoning? The questions spiraled endlessly, and with each one, Marcus felt himself sinking deeper into quicksand. He pulled out the burner phone he'd bought months ago, back when he still thought he might find legitimate work and needed a callback number. He'd kept it, adding $5 of minutes when he could spare it. Now he opened the browser and searched for Alan Cho. The forum post was still there, 3 years old but preserved in the internet's infinite memory. The email address was still listed. Marcus created a new email account. His hands trembled as he typed, I found something on the Ocean Empress, something big, need to talk, confidential, urgent. He stared at the message for 5 full minutes before hitting send. Then he deleted the browser history, turned off the phone, and sat in the darkness, waiting for dawn and wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Or the only choice that might save it. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn sounded. The port of Oakland never truly slept. Containers still moved, ships still loaded and unloaded, commerce ground on regardless of the hour. But here, in this forgotten corner with the dead ships and the broken cars and the people no one saw, everything was quiet. Marcus looked back at Tyler, peacefully asleep despite the revelations of the day. His son had seen a cruise ship up close, had walked through corridors and climbed stairs and stood in the engine room where his father used to work, had seen the man Marcus used to be, even if just for a few hours. And Tyler had smiled, had laughed, had called Marcus smart. That alone was worth something. Even if everything else fell apart, that moment was real. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter against the cold and closed his eyes. He didn't pray. He'd stopped believing anyone was listening about the time Elena died. But he sent out a wordless hope into the universe anyway. Please, let me fix this. Let me keep him safe. Let me be the father he deserves. The night offered no answer. Just the whisper of wind through the fence, the distant clang of metal on metal, and the weight of 260 million reasons why Marcus Reed's life would never be the same. Whether that was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. Alan Cho responded within 6 hours. Marcus had checked the burner email obsessively all morning, refreshing it every few minutes while Tyler ate breakfast at the church soup kitchen. When the notification finally appeared, Marcus's heart jumped so hard he thought the woman sitting next to him must have heard it. The message was brief, almost cryptic. "Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pier 39, South End, near the Carousel. Come alone. Don't bring anything you're not willing to lose." Marcus read it 3 times, his stomach twisting tighter with each pass. Don't bring anything you're not willing to lose. What did that mean? Was it a warning? A threat? Or just the kind of thing someone said when they'd spent too long investigating dangerous people? He glanced over at Tyler, who was carefully cutting his pancakes into perfect squares before eating them one at a time. His son. The only thing Marcus had left in the world that mattered. The one thing he absolutely could not afford to lose. But he'd already sent the message, already set things in motion. And backing out now felt like drowning when someone had just thrown you a rope. Marcus spent the rest of the day at the library, Tyler occupied with books while Marcus sat at a public computer terminal and searched for answers. He started with the Ocean Empress itself. The Wikipedia page was sparse but informative. Built in 1998 by Fincantieri Shipyards in Italy. Operated by Meridian Luxury Lines from 1999 to 2009. Gross tonnage, 76,000 tons. Passenger capacity, 1,800. Crew, 850. But the interesting part came at the end of the entry. In 2009, the Ocean Empress was sold to private equity firm Archway Holdings. The vessel ceased passenger operations and was reportedly converted for private use. Its current status and location remain unknown as of 2012. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Converted for private use. That was one hell of a euphemism. He searched for Archway Holdings. The results were almost non-existent. A single entry in a dissolved corporation's database showed the company had been registered in the Cayman Islands in 2008 and officially dissolved in 2015. No executives listed, no business address, no paper trail beyond the bare minimum required by law. A shell company. The kind used to hide ownership, move money, conduct business that couldn't stand up to scrutiny. Marcus dug deeper, searching through maritime news archives, industry forums, anywhere that might have information about the ship's missing years between 2009 and when it showed up in the Oakland decommission yard. He found a thread on a shipping enthusiast forum from 2011. The original post asked, "Anyone know what happened to the Ocean Empress? She's completely vanished from tracking systems." The responses were mostly speculation. One user claimed the ship had been spotted in the Black Sea. Another said it was being used as a floating hotel in Dubai. A third suggested it had been seized by authorities and quietly scrapped. But one response, buried 17 comments deep, caught Marcus's attention. The user's name was Maritime Watch, and they'd written, "Word in the industry is OE was being used for transport, not passengers, not cargo. Something else, something that required a vessel with legitimate registration but off-grid operations. Draw your own conclusions. Transport for what?" Marcus thought he knew the answer. Money, assets, things that needed to move across borders without triggering international banking regulations or customs inspections. A luxury cruise ship could dock in dozens of ports without raising suspicion. It could host private parties where briefcases changed hands. It could sail international waters where laws got murky and enforcement got complicated. The Ocean Empress hadn't been a cruise ship after 2009. It had been a floating vault, a mobile safe house for people who had too much money and too many questions following them. Marcus found another lead in an old Reuters article from 2013. International Task Force Investigating Offshore Money Laundering Network. The article detailed a multi-year investigation into how wealthy Russians, Middle Eastern oligarchs, and South American drug cartels were moving assets out of their home countries to avoid sanctions, taxes, and prosecution. The investigation mentioned luxury yachts, private planes, and repurposed commercial vessels as methods of transport. It didn't name the Ocean Empress specifically, but Marcus's instincts, the same instincts that had let him diagnose engine problems by sound alone, told him this was it. He kept searching, following thread after thread, until he found the name that tied everything together. Viktor Sokolov. The name appeared in a Financial Times article from 2012. Russian oligarch arrested in Moscow on corruption charges. Sokolov had made billions in oil and natural gas during the privatization chaos of the 90s. But his real business, according to prosecutors, was moving money for other oligarchs who needed to get assets out of Russia before the government seized them. The article mentioned that Sokolov's fortune, estimated at over $6 billion, had disappeared before his arrest. Authorities suspected offshore accounts, shell companies, hidden assets. But despite years of investigation by multiple governments, most of the money was never recovered. Marcus sat back from the computer, his mind racing. The Ocean Empress, Archway Holdings, Viktor Sokolov. It all fit together like the components of an engine, each part connecting to the next in a system designed to move something valuable from point A to point B without anyone noticing. And now that engine had broken down, abandoned in a decommission yard, its cargo still hidden in the vault below. $260 million. Just a fraction of Sokolov's missing billions, but enough to change Marcus's life forever. Enough to get him killed if the wrong people learned he'd found it. "Dad?" Tyler's voice pulled Marcus back to reality. "Can we go now? I'm hungry." Marcus checked his watch. 4:30. They'd been here for 6 hours. "Yeah, buddy, let's go get dinner." But as they walked out of the library into the gray Oakland afternoon, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He kept glancing over his shoulder, checking parked cars for occupied driver's seats, scanning faces in the crowd for anyone paying too much attention. He was being paranoid. He knew that. No one had seen him at the ship. No one knew what he'd found. But paranoia, Marcus was learning, was just pattern recognition wearing a different mask. That night, after Tyler fell asleep, Marcus lay awake in the driver's seat and faced the question he'd been avoiding for days. What was he going to do? The moral answer was obvious: report it to the authorities. That money was stolen, hidden by criminals, stained with whatever crimes had been necessary to accumulate it. It didn't belong to Marcus, and keeping it would make him complicit in whatever darkness it represented. But the desperate answer whispered just as loudly, "Take it and run. Not all of it. That would be impossible and stupid. But enough. One of those gold bars would be worth $700,000. He could sell it to a pawn shop, take whatever fraction they offered, and still have enough to get Tyler into a real home. To buy food that wasn't donated. To stop living like refugees in their own country. Marcus closed his eyes and thought about Elena. What would she say if she could see him now? Would she tell him to do the right thing, to stay honest no matter how hard life got? Or would she beg him to take care of their son by any means necessary? He'd never know. Elena was gone, and he was alone with a choice that felt impossible. The next day, Marcus left Tyler with Rosa at the shelter. She'd started a kids program in the afternoons, reading, art projects, basic tutoring. Tyler liked her, and Marcus trusted her. It was the only place he felt safe leaving his son. "I have a job interview," Marcus told Rosa, hating himself for the lie. "That's wonderful," she smiled warmly. "I'll keep Tyler as long as you need. You just focus on getting that job." Tyler hugged him goodbye. "Good luck, Dad. You're gonna do great." Marcus's chest tightened so hard he could barely breathe. "Thanks, buddy. I'll be back soon." He took the bus to Pier 39, arriving 20 minutes early. The pier was crowded with tourists despite the cold October weather. Families eating at seafood restaurants, street performers juggling or playing guitar, vendors selling cheap sunglasses and Golden Gate Bridge snow globes. Marcus moved through the chaos to the south end, where the old carousel spun in lazy circles, its painted horses rising and falling to cheerful calliope music that felt surreal given the circumstances. At exactly 2 p.m., a man approached, mid-50s, Asian, wearing a worn leather jacket and jeans that had seen better days. His hair was graying at the temples, and his eyes never stopped moving, constantly scanning the crowd, the water, the buildings behind them. "Marcus?" he asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "Alan?" "Let's walk." Alan turned without waiting for agreement and headed toward the edge of the pier where the water lapped against the pylons. They walked in silence for a minute, moving away from the crowds. When they were alone, Alan stopped and faced the bay, hands in his pockets, looking like a man enjoying the view. But his voice was all business. "You said you found something on the Ocean Empress. I need you to tell me exactly what that means." Marcus had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in his head, but now that the moment was here, his mouth felt full of sand. "I found the ship in the decommission yard near Oakland." "And?" Alan's tone made it clear he already suspected there was more. "And there's something on it, hidden, in the engine room." "What kind of something?" Marcus swallowed hard. "A vault, behind a false wall, full of cash, gold, bonds, documents, more money than I've ever seen." Alan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "You opened the vault?" "Yeah." "How much are we talking about?" 260 million, give or take." Alan was silent for a long moment. Then he let out a slow breath that sounded like he'd been punched. "Jesus Christ." "What is this?" Marcus asked. "Whose money is it?" Alan turned to face him fully, studying Marcus with an intensity that made him feel like he was being X-rayed. "Before I answer that, I need to know, did you take anything?" "No." "Did anyone see you?" "No, just—" Marcus stopped himself. "Just what?" "My son. He was with me the second time." Alan's jaw tightened. "You brought your kid?" "I didn't know what was in there. I was just—" Marcus heard his voice rising and forced it down. "I was just showing him the ship, where I used to work, and we found the vault together." "How old is your son?" 8. Alan rubbed his face with both hands. Okay, does anyone else know?" "No, I emailed you, that's it." "Good, that's good." Alan was quiet again, thinking. Then he said, "You ever hear the name Viktor Sokolov?" Marcus nodded. "Russian oligarch. I found articles about him." "Then you know he was arrested in 2012 on corruption charges. What you probably don't know is that Sokolov wasn't just moving his own money. He was the banker for half the Russian mob, 3 different cartels, and more corrupt politicians than you could count. The vault you found, that's not just Sokolov's money. That's money from some of the most dangerous people on the planet." Marcus felt like the pier had dropped out from under him. "But he's in prison, in Russia. He can't come after it." "No, but the people who gave him that money to hide can. And when Sokolov got arrested, a lot of very powerful people lost access to their emergency funds. They've been looking for it ever since." "For 12 years?" "For 12 years, Alan confirmed. "That kind of money doesn't just disappear. Someone has been searching. Someone has been waiting for it to surface." Marcus's legs felt weak. He sat down on a bench, head in his hands. "What do I do?" Alan sat beside him. "You have 2 choices. Walk away, forget you ever saw that vault, and pray to God that whoever's looking for it doesn't realize someone else found it first. Or," he paused, "you report it to the authorities, cooperate fully, and hope they can protect you." "Protect me from what?" Alan's voice was grim. "From the kind of people who kill witnesses. From Russian bratva who torture families to send messages. From cartel enforcers who don't leave loose ends." Marcus's breath came short and fast. I have a son, an 8-year-old son. We're homeless. We sleep in a car. I was just looking for scrap metal to sell so I could feed him. For the first time, Alan's expression softened. I know. I can see it on you. The desperation, the exhaustion. You're barely holding on. So what do I do? Marcus's voice cracked. If I report it, we become targets. If I keep quiet, we stay invisible but stay broke. If I take any of it, we're dead. There's no good choice here. Alan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, there is one choice that might work. Report it through official channels, but anonymously at first. The government has a process for this. Asset forfeiture, finder's fees. If you help them recover $260 million in stolen assets, you could be entitled to a substantial reward. 5%, maybe 10%. That's $13 to $26 million. Marcus's head snapped up. You're serious? I've worked cases like this before. Governments want the money more than they want to prosecute the finder, especially if the finder cooperates. And the reward programs are designed to incentivize exactly this kind of tip-off. But you said we'd be targets. You would be if your identity became public. But the authorities can keep you anonymous during the investigation. Protective custody if necessary. New identities after if it comes to that. It's not perfect, but it's the only play you've got that ends with you and your son alive and financially secure. Marcus stared out at the water, watching a ferry cut across the bay toward Alcatraz. $13 to $26 million. Enough to change everything. Enough to give Tyler the life Elena had wanted for him, but also enough to paint a target on both their backs. What if I say no? Marcus asked quietly. What if I just walk away? Alan's response was immediate and cold. Then someone else will find it eventually, and when they do, they might start asking questions, checking security footage. Looking at who's been in the yard. Your car is parked a quarter mile from that fence. You've got California plates. You're not invisible, Marcus. You just think you are. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. Marcus had been so careful about entering the ship, but he'd never thought about what happened after. About traces he might have left. About patterns that could be noticed. How much time do I have? Marcus asked. To decide? Not much. Every day that money sits there is another day someone else might find it, or another day the people looking for it get closer. Marcus thought about Tyler, about Rosa watching him at the shelter, probably helping him with a coloring book or reading him a story, about his son's smile when Marcus had showed him the engine room, about the way Tyler had called him smart. He thought about Elena, about the promises he'd made at her bedside. Take care of our baby, keep him safe, give him a better life than we had. He thought about the vault, about all that money just sitting there in the dark, waiting for someone to claim it, and he made his decision. I'll do it, Marcus said. I'll report it, but I need guarantees. For my son, protection, anonymity, the whole thing. Alan nodded slowly. I have contacts in the FBI, people I trust. Let me make some calls, set up a meeting. Official, documented, protected. Can you give me 48 hours? Yeah. Where can I reach you? Marcus rattled off the burner email address. I check it every few hours. Good. Stay away from the ship. Don't talk to anyone about this. And Marcus? Alan's voice hardened. If you're having second thoughts about taking some of that money and running, let me be clear. That would be the worst mistake of your life. The people this money belongs to, they have long memories and short tempers. You'd be running for the rest of your life, and they'd find you eventually. I won't take it, Marcus said. And he meant it, mostly. They parted ways at the pier. Marcus took the bus back to the shelter, his mind spinning with possibilities and fears. $13 million, $26 million, enough to buy a house, to send Tyler to college, to never be hungry or cold or scared again, but also enough to make them worth hunting. He picked up Tyler from Rosa, who reported that he'd been an absolute angel all afternoon. Tyler chattered about the story Rosa had read, something about a lion and a mouse becoming friends, while Marcus navigated them back to the car. It wasn't until they were settled in for the night, Tyler already dozing in the back seat, that Marcus noticed something wrong. The lock on the driver's side door was scratched, fresh scratches, bright metal showing through the worn paint, like someone had tried to jimmy it open. Marcus's heart rate spiked. He checked the other doors. The passenger side had similar marks. Someone had tried to break into the car. He looked around the parking area, suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow, every parked vehicle, every possible hiding spot. Nothing moved. The port was quiet, except for the usual distant sounds of machinery. But someone had been here. Someone had tried to get in. Marcus checked the back seat where Tyler slept. Everything looked untouched. He checked under the seats, in the glove compartment, under the floor mats. Nothing missing, nothing added. Maybe it was just a random theft attempt. God knows the car looked like an easy target, but Marcus's instincts, those same instincts screaming at him since he'd opened the vault, said otherwise. Someone was watching. Someone knew. He spent that night awake, every sound making him jump, his hand wrapped around a tire iron he'd pulled from the trunk. Tyler slept peacefully, unaware of the danger, and Marcus was grateful for that. His son still thought his father could protect him from anything. Marcus prayed that was true. The next morning, Marcus did something he should have done days ago. He took Tyler to the police station. Not to report the vault, not yet, but to ask about protective custody procedures, about how they handled witnesses in danger, about what resources existed for people who needed to disappear. The desk sergeant looked at him with barely concealed skepticism. "Sir, are you in immediate danger?" "I might be. I'm not sure." "Has someone threatened you?" "No, but—" "Assaulted you?" "No." "Then I'm not sure what you're asking for." Marcus glanced down at Tyler, who was sitting on a bench looking at a wanted poster on the wall. He lowered his voice. "If someone witnessed something big, and they were scared to come forward because of retaliation, what would you tell them?" The sergeant's expression changed, interest replacing skepticism. "What kind of something?" "I can't say yet, but serious. Federal level serious." "Then I'd tell them to contact the FBI directly. We handle local crimes. Anything involving federal investigation, organized crime, witness protection, that's their jurisdiction." Marcus nodded. It was what he'd expected, but hearing it confirmed made it real. This was happening. He was really going to do this. He was about to leave when the sergeant said, "Sir, whatever you saw, whatever you know, don't wait too long to report it. Things like that have a way of getting worse if you sit on them." That afternoon, Marcus received the email from Alan Cho. "Meeting set, tomorrow, 10 a.m., Federal Building, 450 Golden Gate Avenue. Ask for Agent Sarah Dawson. She's expecting you. Bring your son if you don't have childcare. They'll provide security and privacy for the conversation. This is happening, Marcus. No turning back after tomorrow." Marcus read the email 3 times. Then he called Rosa and asked if she could watch Tyler tomorrow morning. "Of course," she said. "Big job interview?" "Something like that," Marcus said. Another lie. They were piling up like debts he couldn't repay. But that night, as he lay in the car unable to sleep, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "We know what you found. We know who you are. Give it back and we forget this happened. Keep it and your son pays the price." Marcus's blood turned to ice. He sat up so fast he hit his head on the roof. His hands shook as he checked the back seat. Tyler was still asleep, safe, unaware. Marcus stared at the message, his breath coming in short gasps. How did they know? How did they find him? He'd been so careful. Another message arrived. We're watching. We're always watching. You have 24 hours to return what you stole. But Marcus hadn't stolen anything. He'd only looked. He hadn't taken a single dollar. Which meant whoever sent this message didn't know that. They only knew he'd found the vault. They were guessing about the rest, trying to scare him into giving himself away. Or they were planning to take him out regardless. Marcus's hands trembled as he forwarded the messages to Alan Cho's email with a single line. They know. What do I do? The response came within minutes. Don't panic. This confirms you're onto something real. Don't respond to the messages. Don't go anywhere alone. Meeting still on for tomorrow. We'll have protection in place. Don't panic. Easy to say when your son wasn't sleeping 3 feet away from you while death threats came through. Marcus deleted the messages, turned off the phone, and spent the rest of the night sitting guard, the tire iron across his lap, watching every shadow for movement. Dawn came slowly. Marcus was exhausted, wired on adrenaline and terror. He woke Tyler gently and tried to act normal as they went through their morning routine, but his eyes never stopped scanning, never stopped looking for the threat he knew was out there somewhere. He dropped Tyler at the shelter with Rosa, hugging him longer than usual. "Dad, I can't breathe," Tyler laughed. "Sorry, buddy, Marcus pulled back, forced a smile. "I love you. You know that, right?" "I know. Love you too. Good luck at your interview." Marcus's throat closed up. "Thanks!" Then he turned and walked toward the bus stop, toward the Federal Building, toward the point of no return. And as he walked, he saw it. A black sedan parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine running. Someone inside watching. Marcus froze. His instincts screamed run, but his feet wouldn't move. The sedan's back window rolled down 6 inches. A voice called out, accented, Russian maybe. "Marcus Reed, we need to talk about what belongs to us." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. This was it, the moment where everything went wrong or somehow impossibly went right. Marcus did the only thing he could think of. He ran. Not away from the Federal Building, but toward it. Straight toward it, legs pumping, lungs burning, the sound of car doors opening behind him. He had 3 blocks to cover, 3 blocks between him and safety. Behind him, footsteps pounded the pavement. Someone shouted in Russian. A hand grabbed his jacket and Marcus twisted away, kept running. 2 blocks. His chest burned. His vision blurred. More footsteps. Closer now. 1 block. The Federal Building loomed ahead, its concrete facade like a fortress. A hand grabbed his shoulder, spinning him around. Marcus swung wildly, connecting with something, a jaw, a chest, he wasn't sure. The grip loosened and he ran. 1/2 block. Security guards at the entrance had noticed the commotion. They were moving toward him. Marcus reached the steps and practically threw himself up them, gasping, "Federal witness! Agent Sarah Dawson! They're after me!" The guards moved fast, forming a barrier between Marcus and his pursuers. The men from the sedan stopped at the bottom of the steps, 3 of them, all wearing dark suits and expressions that promised violence. One of them called up in heavily accented English, "You are making very big mistake." "Get inside," one of the security guards told Marcus. "Now!" Marcus stumbled through the doors into the Federal Building's lobby. His legs gave out and he collapsed onto a bench, gasping for air, his whole body shaking. A woman appeared, mid-40s, sharp suit, Federal ID clipped to her belt. "Marcus Reed?" He could only nod. "I'm Agent Sarah Dawson. You're safe now." She looked at the security guards. "Those men outside, detain them if they don't disperse. Run their IDs." She turned back to Marcus, her expression a mixture of concern and grim satisfaction. "Looks like you brought us more than just information. You brought us the people looking for it. Come with me. We have a lot to talk about." As Marcus followed her to the elevators, legs still trembling, lungs still burning, one thought dominated his mind. Tyler. He had to keep Tyler safe. Nothing else mattered. And whether he'd just saved his son's life or irrevocably endangered it, only time would tell. Agent Sarah Dawson led Marcus to a conference room on the 11th floor. The space was sterile and professional. Gray walls, a long table, no windows. A pitcher of water and plastic cups sat in the center. Marcus's hands shook so badly he could barely pour himself a glass. "Those men outside," he managed to say. "Did they—" "They dispersed before we could detain them, got into their vehicle and left, but we have their plates, surveillance footage, everything we need." Agent Dawson sat across from him, her expression calm but focused. "Marcus, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." So he did. He started with the desperation, the 11 months of living in the car, the decision to enter the decommission yard looking for scrap metal. He described finding the Ocean Empress, the eerie preservation of everything inside, Tyler's excitement at seeing where his father used to work. He explained the hidden door, the code, the vault, and he told her about the money, all of it. Agent Dawson took notes, asked clarifying questions, but mostly she just listened. When Marcus finished, she sat back and studied him for a long moment. "Alan Cho briefed me on your situation. He vouched for your character, said you were desperate but honest. Looking at you now, I believe him." She paused. "What you've found is significant. Potentially one of the largest asset recoveries in recent history, but I need to be clear with you about what happens next." Marcus nodded, throat dry. "There will be a process. Interviews, depositions, possibly testimony. We'll need to verify everything you've told me. We'll deploy a team to the ship today to secure and catalog the vault's contents. And yes, there will be risks. The people who own that money, or think they own it, won't stop looking just because federal authorities are involved." "What about my son?" Marcus's voice cracked on the word son. "What about Tyler?" "We'll provide protection, immediate relocation to a secure facility for both of you. Round-the-clock security until we've neutralized the threat, and if necessary, we can arrange witness protection, new identities, new location, the works." Marcus's head spun. New identities. New location. That meant leaving behind everything. Not that he had much to leave, but it meant Tyler would grow up as someone else, would never know his own name, would lose even more of his mother's memory. "Is there another option?" Marcus asked. Agent Dawson's expression softened. "There might be. If we can identify and arrest the people threatening you quickly enough, the need for new identities diminishes. And Marcus," she leaned forward, "there's something else you should know. If this leads to a successful recovery, you're entitled to a finder's fee. The government has asset forfeiture programs designed to incentivize exactly this kind of cooperation." "How much?" The question felt crass, mercenary, but Marcus had to know. "Depends on what we recover and how valuable your information proves, but typically between 10 and 15% of the total value. You said $260 million? Marcus did the math in his head. $26 to $39 million. His vision swam. That wasn't just money. That was Tyler's entire future. College, medical care, a home, security. Everything Elena had wanted for their son. "I'll do whatever you need," Marcus said. "Depositions, testimony, whatever. Just keep Tyler safe." "That's the priority," Agent Dawson assured him. "Let me make some calls. There's a family unit nearby, safe houses for witnesses with children. You'll stay there starting tonight. We'll get you both set up, then we move on the ship." 3 hours later, Marcus and Tyler were in an unmarked SUV heading to a residential neighborhood in Pleasant Hill, 30 miles from Oakland. Tyler was confused and scared. Marcus had pulled him from the shelter abruptly, offered minimal explanation, and now they were driving with federal agents. "Dad, what's happening?" Tyler asked for the 3rd time. Marcus held his son's hand tight. "Remember the ship, the secret we found?" Tyler nodded, eyes wide. "Well, it turns out that secret was really important, and now some people who want it are looking for us. So these agents—" He gestured to the driver and passenger, both armed, both professional. They're going to keep us safe while everything gets sorted out. Are we in trouble? Nobody. We did the right thing. We told the truth. But sometimes when you tell the truth, it makes bad people angry. So we have to be careful for a little while. The safe house was a modest two-story home on a quiet street. It had a small yard, a garage, and most importantly, bars on the windows and federal agents stationed outside. Inside, the furniture was generic but clean. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs, a full kitchen stocked with food, and a living room with a TV. Tyler explored cautiously while Marcus stood in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator full of actual food. Milk, eggs, cheese, fresh vegetables, bread that wasn't donated or day old. When was the last time he'd had access to a kitchen, to a stove, to the ability to cook his son a real meal? That night, Marcus made spaghetti with meat sauce. Nothing fancy, just jar sauce and ground beef, but Tyler ate 3 helpings and declared it the best dinner ever. After, they sat together on the couch and watched a movie, some animated thing about talking cars that Tyler loved, and for a few hours Marcus let himself believe they might actually be okay. The next morning, Agent Dawson called. "We've secured the ship. The vault's contents are being catalogued now. Marcus, you weren't exaggerating. Preliminary count puts it at $262 million in cash and assets. Gold alone is worth $43 million. The bonds are still being verified, but they appear legitimate." Marcus's knees went weak. He sat down hard on the kitchen chair. $262 million. And that's just the monetary value. The documents we found, passports, hard drives, ledgers, those are connecting us to a network we've been trying to crack for years. Viktor Sokolov was just one piece. This vault contains evidence of money laundering operations spanning 3 continents. What does that mean for us? It means your cooperation is extraordinarily valuable. We've already identified 2 of the men who confronted you yesterday, Russian nationals with ties to organized crime. We have warrants out. Interpol is involved. This is bigger than we thought, Marcus, and you're at the center of it. Over the following weeks, Marcus lived in a strange limbo. He and Tyler stayed in the safe house, guarded around the clock. Tyler attended a temporary school nearby under an alias. Marcus hated lying to his son about his own name, but Agent Dawson insisted it was necessary. Marcus spent hours each day in depositions, walking federal prosecutors through every detail of finding the vault, describing the ship's layout, providing his engineering expertise to verify that the vault had been professionally installed and maintained. The case moved faster than anyone expected. The evidence from the vault was damning: names, dates, transaction records. Within 6 weeks, federal authorities had arrested 14 people across 5 states. International warrants went out for 30 more. The media caught wind of the story, though Marcus's identity remained sealed. Headlines screamed about the ghost ship Fortune and the cruise ship vault bust. Marcus read the articles in the safe house living room, Tyler asleep upstairs, and felt disconnected from his own life. This was happening to him. This was his story, but it felt like reading about someone else. 3 months after that morning run to the federal building, Agent Dawson arrived at the safe house with news. "We've neutralized the immediate threat," she said, sitting across from Marcus at the kitchen table. "The men who threatened you are either in custody or out of the country. The organization that was hunting for that money has bigger problems now. Most of their leadership is facing RICO charges. You're not completely clear, but the risk has diminished significantly. What does that mean for us?" "It means you can leave protective custody. We'll still maintain surveillance for a while, and I strongly recommend you relocate. New city, fresh start. But you don't need new identities. Tyler can be Tyler. You can be Marcus Reed." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. "And the finder's fee?" Agent Dawson smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "The U.S. Attorney's Office has approved your compensation. Final amount, after taxes and processing, $22,400,000. The number hung in the air like something physical. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. $22 million. It'll be paid out over 6 months in installments, Agent Dawson continued. We've also arranged for you to meet with a financial advisor who specializes in cases like this. Someone trustworthy who can help you manage it properly, invest it, protect it, because Marcus. Her voice became serious. Money like this comes with responsibility and risk. There will be people who want to take advantage of you, family members you haven't heard from in years, investment opportunities that are really scams. You need to be smart. Marcus found his voice. I just want to take care of my son. I know. And you can. You absolutely can. That night, after Agent Dawson left, Marcus sat on the edge of Tyler's bed and watched his son sleep. In the soft glow of the nightlight, Tyler looked so peaceful, so innocent. He had no idea that his life was about to change completely. Marcus thought about Elena, about the promises he'd made, about how close he'd come to breaking them, to failing their son entirely, and about how sometimes, when you're drowning and you've given up hope, a hand reaches down from somewhere unexpected and pulls you back to the surface. He wasn't drowning anymore. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the driveway of a house in Sacramento. Not a mansion. He'd deliberately avoided anything ostentatious. Just a comfortable 3-bedroom home in a good school district with a backyard for Tyler and a garage where Marcus could work. He'd paid cash, no mortgage, no debt, just theirs. Tyler burst through the front door, running from room to room, shouting with joy, "Dad! Dad! I have my own room with a closet, a real closet!" Marcus smiled, throat tight. "I know, buddy. And there's a backyard. Can we get a dog?" "Maybe. Let's settle in first." They spent the afternoon unpacking boxes. Not that they had many. Most of what they owned still fit in the Accord, which Marcus had kept despite everything. He'd had it repaired, engine rebuilt, and now it sat in the garage like a monument to where they'd come from. That evening, Marcus made dinner in his own kitchen. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, rice. They ate at their own table in their own home, and Marcus had to excuse himself twice to cry in the bathroom where Tyler couldn't see. But the house was just the beginning. Marcus had spent the past 6 months not just waiting for the money, but planning. He'd met with the financial advisor Agent Dawson recommended, a woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in helping lottery winners and inheritance recipients manage sudden wealth. Patricia had been blunt. Most people who came into money quickly lost it within 5 years. Bad investments, poor planning, people taking advantage. Marcus was determined not to be a statistic. He'd invested conservatively, index funds, bonds, real estate, enough to generate steady income without risking everything. He'd set up a trust for Tyler's education, fully funded through graduate school if he wanted it. He'd put aside money for emergencies, for health care, for the future. But he'd also set aside something else, $2 million earmarked for a specific purpose, a foundation. Marcus called it Second Chances. The mission was simple: help homeless families get back on their feet. Not temporary shelters or meal programs. Those were important, but they already existed. Second Chances focused on the gap between homelessness and stability, security deposits for apartments, work clothes for job interviews, car repairs so people could get to work, child care so single parents could attend classes, the small practical things that made the difference between staying on the streets and climbing out. Marcus knew exactly what those things were because he'd needed all of them. He started small, rented a modest office space, hired a social worker named Jennifer who'd spent 15 years in homeless services and understood the system's failures, put out word through shelters and community organizations that help was available. The first family came within a week, a mother and 2 kids living in their car after an eviction. She had a job lined up but needed first and last month's rent plus deposit. $3,000 she didn't have. Second Chances wrote the check that afternoon. Within 2 weeks, she was in an apartment, kids enrolled in school, life moving forward. Then came a veteran with PTSD who needed job training and interview clothes. A young couple whose car had broken down, stranding them without transportation to work. A grandmother raising 3 grandkids who needed school supplies and winter coats. One by one, families came, and one by one, Marcus helped them. But something else happened too. Marcus started working again. He'd kept his marine engineering certifications current during the Safe House months, taken online courses, passed recertification exams. Now, with a stable address and solid references from Agent Dawson, who'd written a carefully worded letter about his assistance in a federal matter, he started applying for positions. A maritime equipment company in Sacramento needed someone to consult on engine overhauls. Marcus took the contract. A shipping company wanted an advisor for a fleet modernization project. Marcus said yes. Slowly, carefully, he rebuilt his professional life. Not because he needed the money, the finder's fee had secured their financial future, but because he needed the purpose, needed to use his hands and his mind for something productive. Needed to be Marcus Reed the engineer, not just Marcus Reed the guy who got lucky. Tyler flourished in ways that broke Marcus's heart and put it back together simultaneously. Real school with teachers who knew his actual name, friends who came over for play dates, soccer on Saturdays, a bedroom where he could spread out his toys and books and just be a kid. But more than any of that, Tyler had his father back, the real version, not the desperate, exhausted shell who'd been barely surviving. Marcus had time now, time to help with homework, time to throw a baseball in the backyard, time to read bedtime stories and answer questions and just be present. One night, about a year after they'd moved into the house, Tyler asked a question that stopped Marcus cold. "Dad, do you ever think about Mom?" They were sitting on the back porch, watching fireflies in the yard. Marcus had been telling Tyler about a project at work, but now the conversation shifted into deeper territory. "Every day," Marcus said honestly, "every single day. Do you think she'd be proud of us? Of what we did?" Marcus pulled Tyler close. "I think she'd be proud of you, absolutely. You were so brave through everything. Living in the car, eating at shelters, never complaining. You're the strongest kid I know. But what about you? Would she be proud of you?" Marcus thought about that. About the months of desperation. About breaking into the ship. About the moment he'd stood in front of that vault and had to choose between taking what wasn't his and doing the right thing. "I hope so," Marcus said quietly. "I made a lot of mistakes. But I tried to do the right thing when it mattered most. I think Mom would understand that I was fighting for you. For us." Tyler was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think she would be proud, because you didn't give up, and you help people now, like she used to help people." Marcus's eyes burned. Elena had been a nurse, had spent her career caring for others, had believed in service, in giving back, in making the world slightly better than you found it. "You're right," Marcus said. "She would like that I'm helping people. I wish I could tell her about it." "Maybe you can," Tyler said with the simple faith of a 9-year-old. "Maybe she knows anyway." Second Chances grew faster than Marcus expected. Word spread through the homeless community that there was real help available, help that didn't come with judgment or bureaucracy. By the end of the first year, they'd assisted 43 families. By the end of the second year, over 100. Marcus hired more staff. Jennifer brought on 2 case managers. They rented a bigger office. They started partnerships with job training programs, with landlords willing to work with previously homeless tenants, with car repair shops that gave discounts to Second Chances clients. But Marcus's favorite part was the direct work. Once a week, He volunteered at the office, meeting with families, hearing their stories, finding solutions. He knew what it felt like to be on the other side of that desk, desperate and ashamed. So he treated every person with the dignity they deserved but rarely received. A man named Kevin came in one Thursday. Mid-30s, skilled carpenter, but he'd lost his job during COVID and spiraled into homelessness. His tools had been stolen. Without tools, he couldn't work. Without work, he couldn't get housing. Marcus listened to Kevin's story, then asked a simple question. "If you had your tools back, could you line up work?" Kevin nodded. "I've got 3 contractors who'd hire me tomorrow if I could show up ready." "What tools do you need?" Kevin listed them: saws, drills, levels, measuring equipment. Quality stuff that would cost maybe $2,000. Marcus made a call. By the next afternoon, Kevin had a full set of professional-grade carpentry tools, courtesy of Second Chances. Within a week, he was working. Within a month, he had an apartment. Within 6 months, he'd saved enough to rent shop space and start his own contracting business. And Kevin became a donor, sent Second Chances $500 with a note, paying it forward. "This saved my life." Stories like Kevin's multiplied. Second Chances became known not just as a charity, but as a lifeline. Local news did a feature, then regional news, then national. Marcus declined most interview requests, but he agreed to one, a human interest piece for a major newspaper about the man who turned a homeless nightmare into hope for hundreds. The reporter, a sharp woman named Andrea Mills, spent a day with Marcus. She toured the office, interviewed families they'd helped, and finally sat down with Marcus for the personal part. "Why do this?" Andrea asked. "You could have taken your finder's fee and disappeared, lived comfortably. Why start a foundation?" Marcus thought about how to answer. Finally, he said, "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible. To sleep in a car with your kid and have people walk past you like you don't exist. To be hungry and scared and feel like the whole world has given up on you. Nobody should feel that way. And if I have the resources to help, then I have the responsibility to help. Some people would say you earned that money, that you don't owe anyone anything." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but my son and I were one bad day away from freezing to death in that car. We survived because of luck and a hidden vault I had no right to find. That's not earning something, that's grace. And when you receive grace, you pass it forward." The article ran with the headline, "From Homeless to Hope, How One Father's Desperate Discovery Became a Community Lifeline." It went viral. Within a week, Second Chances received over $300,000 in donations. Volunteers flooded in. Other cities reached out asking how to replicate the model. Marcus found himself thrust into a role he'd never anticipated: advocate, spokesman, voice for people who'd been voiceless. He handled it the way he handled everything, with humility, honesty, and the understanding that he was representing something bigger than himself. But the moment that mattered most came on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 years after finding the vault. Tyler's school was doing a career day. Parents were invited to talk about their jobs. Tyler had asked Marcus to come to talk about being an engineer. Marcus stood in front of a classroom of 4th graders and explained what marine engineers did. He brought pictures of cruise ship engine rooms, showed diagrams of how turbines worked, answered questions about ships and engines and the ocean. But then a little girl in the front row raised her hand. "Mr. Reed, Tyler told us you help homeless people. Can you talk about that?" Marcus glanced at Tyler, who was beaming with pride. Then he looked at the teacher, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay," Marcus said. He sat on the edge of the desk, making himself less formal, more approachable. "A few years ago, my son and I were homeless. We lived in our car for almost a year. It was the hardest time of my life. But we got help. And when things got better for us, I started an organization to help other families who were going through what we went through." Hands shot up. Questions poured out. "What's it like to live in a car? Were you scared? How did you get unhomeless? Do you still help people?" Marcus answered each question honestly, age-appropriately, and as he talked he saw it, understanding dawning in those young faces, empathy replacing judgment, curiosity replacing assumptions. After class, Tyler hugged him tight in the hallway. "Thanks for coming, Dad, and for telling the truth about us." "I'm not ashamed of where we came from," Marcus said. "It's part of our story, part of who we are." "I'm not ashamed either," Tyler said. "I tell my friends about it sometimes, about how we were homeless but you never gave up. They think it's cool." Marcus's throat tightened. Cool. His 9-year-old son thought their homelessness was cool because it represented resilience, survival, overcoming. Maybe that was the greatest victory of all. 5 years after finding the vault, Marcus stood on a stage in Sacramento's community center. Second Chances was being honored with the city's Community Impact Award. The room was filled with families they'd helped, donors who'd supported them, community leaders who'd partnered with them. Marcus looked out at the crowd and saw Kevin, the carpenter, now running a successful contracting business and employing other formerly homeless workers. He saw Maria, who'd been living in a shelter with 3 kids and now managed a restaurant. He saw dozens of faces that represented hundreds of second chances given and taken. Tyler sat in the front row, 11 years old now, growing into the kind of kid who volunteered at the Second Chances office on weekends, who understood that privilege came with responsibility, who'd never forgotten what it felt like to be hungry. Marcus accepted the award with a short speech. He thanked the staff, the donors, the volunteers. He thanked the families who'd trusted them with their stories. And he thanked Tyler for being the reason I kept fighting when everything was falling apart. But afterward, in the quiet moment before they left, Marcus stood alone in the empty auditorium and thought about the journey. From the desperate night he'd crossed that fence to this moment of recognition and impact. From sleeping in a car to owning a home and helping others find theirs. From being invisible to being seen, heard, valued. He thought about the vault. About $260 million that had been hidden in the dark, doing nothing, helping no one, just sitting there while people who earned it through crime hoarded it away. And he thought about the $22 million that had come to him, money that could have corrupted him, isolated him, turned him into someone unrecognizable, but instead had become a tool for stability, for purpose, for giving back. Marcus didn't believe in divine providence or destiny, but he believed in choices, and he'd made the right one when it mattered most. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo album, scrolled to a picture of Elena, young and healthy, holding newborn Tyler in the hospital. She was smiling, exhausted and radiant, her whole future ahead of her. "I kept my promise," Marcus whispered to the image. "I took care of our baby. I gave him a good life. I hope you'd be proud." The photo didn't answer. But somewhere in Marcus's heart, he felt the weight lift just a little more. Grief would never completely leave. Elena would always be the love he lost, the future that was stolen. But the guilt, the shame, the feeling that he'd failed, those were finally beginning to fade. Tyler appeared at his side. "Ready to go, Dad?" Marcus put his phone away and smiled at his son. "Yeah, buddy, let's go home." They walked out together, father and son, into the Sacramento evening. The car, that same old Accord restored and running smooth, waited in the parking lot. Marcus had been offered fancy cars, luxury vehicles befitting his new financial status, but he'd kept the Accord, maintained it, drove it daily, because some things weren't meant to be forgotten. Some struggles shaped you into who you needed to become, and some reminders kept you honest, kept you grateful, kept you grounded. As they drove home through streets Marcus now knew by heart, Tyler said, "Dad, when I grow up, I want to do what you do, help people who need it." Marcus's eyes burned, but this time he let the tears fall. "You already do, buddy. Every day, just by being who you are, you help people, You help me." That night, after Tyler went to bed, Marcus sat on the back porch and looked up at the stars. Somewhere in the universe, ships were sailing, engines were running, families were sleeping safely in their homes. And in one small corner of Sacramento, California, a father and son had built a life from the ashes of loss. Not because of luck, not because of a vault full of stolen money, but because when faced with an impossible choice, Marcus Reed had chosen integrity over desperation, had chosen truth over survival, had chosen to do the right thing even when the right thing might destroy him. And in the end, that choice had saved him, not the money, the choice itself. Because redemption isn't about what you find when you're desperate, it's about what you do with it afterward. It's about using second chances to create third, fourth, and fifth chances for others. It's about remembering where you came from while building toward where you're going. Marcus Reed had been homeless, had been broken, had been invisible, but he'd also been brave, had been honest, had been willing to risk everything for his son's future. And that, more than any vault, any reward, any recognition, was the legacy he would leave behind. Anyone can stumble into fortune, but it takes courage to handle it with integrity. It takes character to transform blessing into purpose. And it takes heart to remember that the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in lives changed, hope restored, and love that endures even when everything else falls apart. As the stars wheeled overhead and the night deepened around him, Marcus Reed closed his eyes and finally, let himself rest. The weight he'd carried for years, the burden of failure and shame and fear, slipped away into the darkness. He was home. Tyler was safe. And tomorrow they would wake up and keep building the life Elena had dreamed of for them. One day, one choice, one second chance at a time. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories of hope, heart, and the courage it takes to do the right thing when everything is on the line. Click to keep discovering stories that remind us what we're capable of. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe integrity still matters, that second chances can change everything, and that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help when you need it most.